2020 election just got a lot more interesting in the last 24 hours. There are growing questions now over the future of the Senate. West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin took to social media announcing he will not seek re-election. Instead, he says he's going to travel the country and gauge creating a movement to mobilize the middle and then bring Americans together. And the decision is leaving the door open for Republicans to flip a Senate seat in a solidly red state. Joining me now, Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. This is a very, very big deal. Was it a surprise, though, Julia?
I don't think it was necessarily a surprise, Marni. Look, Joe Manchin would have had a very tough reelection bid against Governor Jim Justice if he is the Republican nominee next year. West Virginia is a state that has gotten more red, and Manchin, although he is, probably one of the most conservative Democrat in the Senate, it just would have been very difficult for him, I think, to overcome, and a lot of analysts saw it that way. Manchin had also been hinting for some time that he might have a bigger and higher ambitions, doing events with no labels, not ruling out a presidential run, talking about the need to appeal toward the middle. So I don't think it was a surprise, but it was certainly newsworthy, I think, when it happened.
Indeed. And why the announcement now? What do you think was the straw that broke the camel's back? He's been very open about his frustrations.
We knew that Manchin would be making a decision by the end of the year. So this makes sense that it came. I think the last we heard when he said, I think he said he would make a decision by December. So this isn't necessarily, surprising in terms of the timing. But look, if he wants to run for president, and it sounds like he's certainly exploring that possibility, he needs to get going, because you have a number of primaries that are going to start up. And, if he's serious about this, he'll want to build his name recognition and, start touring the country. So it had to happen sooner rather than later.
What are Democrats saying, Julia?
I don't think Democrats are really surprised at this. We saw that President Biden in the White House released a statement essentially congratulating Joe Manchin on his tenure in the Senate. But I don't think Democrats necessarily see him as want to see him running for president, because that could be, mean the role of another potential third party spoiler against Joe Biden. So I think there is definitely some concern there.
How concerned should Democrats be, though, over power in the Senate and sort of the balance of power going into 2024? What do you expect will be the strategy in the next year?
Yeah, I mean, look, this Manchin's decision definitely moves West Virginia even more towards Republicans than it was before. So Democrats are in a difficult spot in the Senate. I would say the map definitely seems to be leaning towards Republicans' favor, though it's going to be a very narrow margin and razor thin races across the board. So, a lot can happen between now and then, but I imagine there's lots of strategizing going on the Democratic side right now.
And in West Virginia, if in fact it is the governor who decides to run for the Senate seat, who is the most likely Democrat that you're hearing talked about?
In terms of likely Democrats, I haven't actually heard much on that, and I don't cover West Virginia specifically. But whoever ends up running is going to have face a very tough uphill battle. Joe Manchin was a known commodity in West Virginia. He was a nationally known figure, and that helped him in his past reelection bids. Whatever Democrat goes up now is likely going to be running potentially against the sitting governor of West Virginia, and in a very deep red state.
Is there an appetite in the middle? We hear about the great middle, the movable middle, as he goes out and tries to gauge, as he said, the hunger for somebody else, a third-party candidate. What are strategists on both sides of the aisle saying about the accessibility of this group of voters?
We talk about the middle, but oftentimes the middle and voters in the middle tend to lean one way or the other. So I don't know if they'd necessarily go for someone who's, trying to appease to both sides. I think Joe Manchin is certainly seen as, popular among members of the middle, but at the same time, there is the question of whether his Joe Manchin candidacy could play into Donald Trump's hands. And I think you'll hear that messaging from Democrats to dissuade voters from going in that direction if Manchin does decide to run.
Yeah, and is there enough power in the middle to combat the extremism on both sides of the aisle? Julia Manchester, thanks. Good to see you. Thank you. for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.